Let's talk episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Welcome back. This is Will with the Padawan Pops YouTube channel, and this is my co-host Kevin, and we are on episode 13 of the Force with Friends podcast. And as you may know, if you've been keeping up, we are now going through the story of Star Wars. So the last couple episodes has been The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and today we are to my personal favorite of the prequels, Revenge of the Sith. So Kevin, as far as the prequels go, is this your favorite as well?
Yes, definitely. I feel like they fixed a lot of the issues that plagued 1 and 2. It is definitely my favorite, and it's up there with probably my top Star Wars movies. But yeah, it's crazy that we're already a third of the way through this. So
I know, right? It's my number 3 Star Wars movie at the moment. It's a rotating list as far as the top 3 to 5 go, but right now it's number 3. And growing up, it was my favorite Star Wars movie. I was like 12 when this came out, or close to it, something like that. And I actually saw this twice in theaters that going into that summer. It's the first movie that I ever saw twice in theater, and I've probably watched it like 2,000 more times since then. So this was my favorite. And like you said, it does remedy a lot of the issues that the prequels that people would complain about, at least. The corny scenes and the corny love lines, there's really only a couple, like when Anakin and Padme are on that balcony, because the movie has so much action. I think the story, there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of action. It's kind of the anti-episode 9. There's a lot of action in episode 9 just for the sake of it. But this movie has a lot of action to really bring the story together, because a lot had to happen and everything is meaningful. So I think that's why when people even complain about the prequels, they don't have much bad to say about episode 3.
Yeah, no, to your point, there's very little in this movie that doesn't push along the tension and the conflict that's brewing throughout, that all ultimately culminates. And so, it just flows really well.
Yeah, for sure. So, very brief overview of what we're doing. We're just trying to tell the story of Star Wars. So we will kind of go on tangents here and there about things we like, but the overarching theme is that one day in 2 months, a listener could sit down and listen to 1 through 9 and kind of see how the themes of Star Wars weave through all the movies. So that's our intention. That's what we're trying to do. We'll see if that's what actually happens by the time we get there. But that's at least our goal. So very quickly, I want to share what our agenda for today is. So for a third episode in a row, we have Palpatine's plans. This movie kind of concludes our first stage of Palpatine's plans. As we get into the sequel trilogy, we're going to get into that yet again. But Palpatine's plans is where we'll start. We'll move into Order 66. We'll go into Anakin's fall to the dark side, and then A New Hope. So that is where we're going today. So let's go ahead and get started on Palpatine's plans. We start this movie off where Palpatine has essentially orchestrated a kidnapping just to get Anakin and Obi-Wan to come rescue him and to get Dooku out of the way. He's pretty maniacal, considering he's the one who recruited Dooku to the dark side, but that's where we start. Palpatine once again out chessing the Jedi, for lack of better words.
Yeah, and that'll be, it sets the tone pretty much for the whole movie, because that's what's going to happen the rest of the movie. Is he is going to, with his comments, with his actions, he is going to basically drive everyone's decisions in the directions that he wants them, right? And this is that starting point where he's setting up, he really sets up the plot of this entire story with everything he does. So, we've been talking about his plan from episode 1, episode 2, but in episode 3, it's really, it's at the core of everything that happens in this movie. So this is where it starts off. He gets them back, and of course, getting Dooku out of the picture, make way for Anakin.
So he's manipulated this war for essentially for 13 years, but officially for 3 at this point, between episodes 2 and 3. and he also manipulates the ending of the war. It's pretty interesting that he pulled all of this off. Obviously it's fictional, so George was going to make it work either
Yeah.
way, but just looking at it from a non-fictional perspective, it's like, wow, he really did pull it over their faces on here, because he made everything work. You don't typically get yourself kidnapped by the bad guys, and just the look on Dooku's face when he's sitting there with
Yeah.
no hands, and when he says kill him to Anakin, and he
Yeah.
looks at him like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, and then he realizes, oh, Anakin is the next one, and the next thing
Yep.
he knows, he's dead. It's too late. I mean, 20 minutes into the movie, he's already got Darth or Count Dooku out of the way. I thought that was so awesome in theaters when that happened.
Oh yeah, and Dooku looks at him, but he doesn't say anything, right? Like he
Yeah,
still knows enough to
yeah,
not say anything because I mean, this guy's been plotting everything from the beginning, so
yeah.
he keeps everybody kind of guessing. But yeah, no, I love that scene. It's a pretty cool fight, right?
Mhm.
Obi-Wan gets knocked out pretty quick, and then it's
Yeah,
just
he loses to
Anakin and
Dooku
Dooku.
so fast, twice.
But I mean, I wonder though if that's because right after that we have Palpatine like, "Hey, leave him. We're not taking right."
Yeah,
Because Palpatine obviously wants him out of the picture,
yes,
right?
because he knows
Everything,
that's essential to getting Anakin.
yeah, right. Like we saw it in the second movie where Anakin's freaking out on the gunship when Padme
Mhm.
falls out, and we see that Obi-Wan has that rapport with him and can calm him down. He has his ear and he listens to him, and so I think Palpatine recognizes that if this wedge is going to be driven between him and the Jedi, right, he wants Obi-Wan gone. Now he doesn't
Yeah.
succeed right there, but again, it just shows that everything he does is moving towards this purpose. And so I kind of
Mhm.
wonder if like Dooku's instruction was like, "Hey, get rid of Obi-Wan first, right? Knock him out of the
Yeah.
picture."
Yeah, that's
uh,
true.
because it seems like it was part of Palpatine's plan all along was for
Yeah.
Obi-Wan to be out of the picture there.
Yeah, he for sure wanted him gone. And so that kind of moves us into the next part of Palpatine's plan. So he wants Anakin on the council, and the
Yep.
council wants Anakin to spy on Palpatine. So they both just kind of work hand in hand with each other, and that's Palpatine's next step is to kind of get that infiltration even more so than he already has, which he Anakin doesn't get the rank of master, which plays just right into Palpatine's hand as well, because
Yep.
Anakin has been mistreated by the Jedi for his entire existence with him, essentially. And this is just like the last straw. Hey, you're the chosen one, but we don't really trust you. So you're on the council,
Yeah.
but really only so we can use you, not because we want you on the council. Which Anakin should not have been on the council. I mean,
Right.
brash,
No, it
immature.
didn't make
Yeah,
sense.
he, he
Right.
he was
No.
not council material. But the way that they're like, yeah, we'll let you on, but we're going to use you. That just really
Yeah.
plays right into Palpatine's hands as well, of turning Anakin against the Jedi.
Yeah, and throughout the first two movies, we've seen the Jedi be pretty oblivious, pretty, incapable. But here, like this movie really highlights the sheer hypocrisy of the Jedi, right?
Mhm.
Because I love how earlier on we were just talking about when he kills Dooku, right? Like Anakin's carrying this burden of not doing things right, right? Like
Right? Yeah.
there's a way I'm supposed to do this. I'm not meeting these expectations. And then the council turns around and is like, well, yeah, we expect you to do it, but we're also going to ask you to break the code, to do some shady things. We're going to go the
Yeah.
deceptive route
Yeah.
here. Like, holy cow, for Anakin, it's like, why am I feeling guilty about all this stuff when you
Yeah.
guys are literally pushing me down this path? And so I feel like that's a huge break. I mean, and he talks about it in Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
That's a huge breaking point for him, right? When he realizes I'm expected to uphold these things, but they're not. Like that's when we really kind of start to see him drift from the
Yeah.
Jedi. So that appointment part and when they ask him to spy, I mean that's a huge that's kind of the ball that gets things rolling. So
And Palpatine knows everything that's going on, because by the time
yeah.
Anakin
Oh yeah.
gets to the theater where he hears the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and
Yeah.
Palpatine is just finishing Anakin's sentences where he's like, "Oh, they asked you to spy on me, didn't they?" And I
Yeah.
mean, he knows every step of the
He
way what
does.
they're doing. It really is incredible, and it shows just the lack of awareness, how far the Jedi have fallen from what they were just 100 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe even less than that. they've just completely been manipulated and fooled to the point of uselessness. And so Palpatine, over the course of a week or two, is able just to unravel the entire order pretty
Yeah.
much by what they do. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the one pulling the strings, but they're the ones who are falling right into it.
And I think one of the most heartbreaking things about this plot line is throughout this, like, Anakin's actually trying to do the right thing,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like
I've got all of that
he
in for Anakin's fall in a
he
few
makes a
minutes.
he makes a genuine effort. One of my favorite
Yeah.
scenes is when he goes to Yoda, right? And he's
Hmm.
like, and this blows my mind with the Jedi too, right? Like, you have your chosen one, right? Like,
Hmm.
you're kind of operating on this. They call him that too. It seems like they're
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
buying into it. Come to you with concerns about these visions and dreams he's having, and Yoda's just like, well, you just got to let go, right? Like, just don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Just let go.
yeah.
But again, that highlights their hypocrisy, because that's what's driving what they're doing, right? They have
Hmm.
this concern about Anakin because they sense this darkness that surrounds him, and just things being clouded around him. Like, they're fearful of that, but they're telling him to let go of the things that are bothering him. And so one of the things I love about Palpatine's plan throughout this is every interaction you get with either Anakin and Palpatine or Anakin and the Council
Hmm.
just continues to drive that wedge. Like, the
Yeah.
Jedi's hypocrisy, the Jedi's disrespect of him, versus Palpatine's affirmation, yeah, you should be on the council. You're, all these great things. There is really not much time with Anakin in those two parties that doesn't serve that purpose. And so I feel like
Yeah.
it really drives the movie along really well.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we'll start to move into, because we're going from Palpatine's plans
Yeah.
into Order 66. So that's pretty much where we're at next. So Palpatine has pushed Anakin, or his goal is to push Anakin to the point of not trusting the Jedi. So he gets there. They get Obi-Wan out because he wants Grievous gone as well. So he wants the war to end. So he
Yeah.
gets to the point to where the war has ended. They send Obi-Wan to take care of Grievous. He does. The war's over, but Anakin has sniffed out that the Emperor is the Sith Lord, and by sniffed out, Palpatine essentially just says, "I'm the Sith
Yeah.
Lord,"
Yeah.
and
Pretty
so
much.
so
He's pretty confident in how
yeah.
he's wormed his way into Anakin's mind at that point.
Yeah,
So,
so he's manipulated Anakin on the basis of love and Padme because he's Anakin's confidant. He knows all this
yep.
stuff, and so he's lied to him about being able to cheat death because, as
Yeah.
we know in canon, Palpatine's plan of cheating death is just a clone body. So
Yeah.
Padme never could have transferred her essence into it anyway. So he's manipulated and lied his way into
Yeah.
that. We get to the big reflection point for Anakin, and Palpatine wins. He has caused
Yeah.
Anakin to succumb, which we're going to get to. But as soon as he does that, his final plan, I hate to say his final order because that's 6 movies from now, but his big plan is to get rid of all the Jedi. And so the clone army that he has orchestrated through Count Dooku, a decade or 13
Mhm.
years prior, has this inhibitor chip that is going to cause them all to kill the Jedi at the Order 66 when he says to do it. So
Yeah.
finally does it. Now we learn a lot more of that through the Clone Wars season 7 and the Bad Batch. It really expands on it and
Yeah.
gives us a lot of knowledge. So if you're not watching the animated stuff, I understand if you don't want to watch all of it, because the Clone Wars, for me, it's hard to watch all of it, but you need to at least watch the essential episodes, because it really,
Yeah.
between the Bad Batch and the Clone Wars and really Jedi Fallen Order, there's a couple levels too, which gives you a big
Yeah.
picture into what happens with Order 66. So definitely watch that. But we're at Order 66 right now. All these clones are going to kill all these Jedi, and it's really so smart that he's like, yeah, the Republic's going to need an army. I'm going to build them
Yeah.
the army, but I'm also going to pre-program the army to kill the Jedi when I say they need to kill the Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you alluded to it, but like, this is the culmination of what Palpatine's been planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the movies have been about Anakin, but really, in terms of Palpatine's goals, like, Anakin's just a bonus, right?
Yep.
Anakin's the perfect apprentice that he can take on, but he wouldn't hesitate to kill Anakin if he need to, right? Like, this is what Palpatine's planning, right? From his
Yeah.
rise to Chancellor to starting this war, getting the Jedi spread out and thinned out and worn out and weary, and then having this army, right? It's perfect, perfectly prepared to wipe them all out. Man, that scene is so cool, because it's just this is the culmination of all of Palpatine's done. And in that single order, like a single instance, he completely wipes out. I mean, for all intents and purposes, wipes out the Jedi, right? We know there's some survivors, but
They keep
I mean,
adding new survivors with every Disney Plus series,
yeah,
but yeah.
that's true. But yeah, like one guy through his plotting and scheming and patience and planning completely destroys the Jedi Order.
Mhm.
And so that scene is crazy because you're just
Yeah.
seeing all that he's planned and worked and put into place. All of a sudden it's happening, and just it happens in an instant. And that's his real victory here. Like Order
Yeah.
66 is his ultimate success.
It is, yeah, and it's so smart because he has an infinite amount of clones. He
Yeah,
orchestrates a war in which he knows Jedi are going to die. I mean, he's got a fully
yeah.
formidable opponent on the other side in the Separatists that he has also concocted. He's going to kill off Jedi here and there. The Jedi are going to build these strong relationships with these super loyal clones that are programmed to follow orders, and they're going to come to love these
Yeah.
clones, and that's how they're going to get trapped in. They would never expect, because a Jedi can foresee things, right? So that's how they deflect the blasters and they do all these things. Well, they're not even thinking that they're going to have to foresee the clones killing them. It all plays into it. And so we see that happening. They're clearly outnumbered. It's elite troopers. And I guess somehow the clones know not to kill Anakin at the same time, I guess. But it's really cool. I've just now thought of that, but
Yeah.
it's cool to see it happening. And also, just a side note, where Yoda cuts off those clones' heads on Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
That's such a cool scene.
Yeah, no, I do like that scene. My personal favorite is when they're fighting at the temple. He like throws his lightsaber and jumps on that guy and pulls it out. Yeah, yeah. No, he gets some pretty cool scenes. But no, yeah, you're right. He really plays into the pride of the Jedi, right? By having them be the leaders of these clones, right? This is who they listen to. This is who they follow orders from. I mean, you're really kind of bolstering, like you said, the Jedi's kind of confidence and air of like, yeah, we're in charge. Like we're the ones leading these guys. They listen to us. They're loyal to us.
Yeah.
And so they catch them completely off guard, right?
And
like
there's no reason they should question them, because I mean, right. For you talk with people who have served in the military, they trust their brothers in arms with their lives.
Yeah.
So same principle here. The Jedi would never suspect this. So again, Palpatine knew exactly what he was doing with this Order 66. And it's really sad too, as you watch The Bad Batch. And I mean, spoiler alert, it follows kind of the demise of the clones after Order 66. Yeah. It shows just how this was Palpatine's endgame, because once he's done with the clones after Order 66, he's genuinely done with them. He starts phasing them out. They start conscripting people. And so Order 66 was the big culmination for this stage of the Palpatine story. If you want to look at it from that angle, he needed them up to a point, and then once he doesn't need them anymore, like everything else in his life, kicks him to the curb.
Yeah, no, the only person important to Palpatine is Palpatine, right? Like we see that time and time again. He doesn't care, right? As long as his agenda.
She's important to him.
And Rey. Okay.
Rey.
Well, we'll leave that for another time.
Yeah, we'll get there. So we kind of mentioned this before, but Order 66 goes hand in hand with Anakin's fall to the dark side. So that is where we're moving next. So just brief reminder of where we're at here. We've covered Palpatine's plans, Order 66. Now we have Anakin falling to the dark side. With this, Palpatine wants Anakin to have a distrust in the Jedi Council, which it happens. He doesn't really even have to do much to do it, because the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order as a whole, they're pretty unlikable when it comes to Anakin because of how they've treated him. We've discussed that at large. But like you had mentioned earlier, Anakin, every step of the way in this movie, he didn't want to kill Count Dooku. Palpatine coaxes him into it. He says it's not the Jedi way, and he does it. He has some remorse over that. He says, I shouldn't have done that. So he knows how the council operates. If you're going to be on the Jedi Council, you need to be a master. Well, they say, we're changing our mind here on this one, but we are going to let you on it just so we can use you to spy on the counselor or the chancellor, which is treason, which he does lay out to them, but they say, it's war, these are difficult times. Go from there. Mace Windu has defeated Palpatine. He's just going to kill him instead of having him stand trial. Anakin's trying to correct his error from earlier in the movie where he killed Dooku. He says, no, he deserves to stand trial. And Mace Windu's like, well, no, this is a different situation. We need to kill him, which they did, right? They needed to kill him. Yeah. But it wasn't their way and how to do it because it was a disarmed prisoner at this point. So they break the rules a lot, and Anakin sees right through that hypocrisy. So when you throw in the distrust that they have built up, plus the issues Anakin has caused on his own, he's got these attachments with Padme. He needs to save her. The Emperor has given him a false bill of goods. So when they're going to use their hypocrisy to get rid of what he needs the Emperor for, he falls to the dark side.
And I mean, obviously the dreams are a big part of that, right? Like echoing what happened in episode 2. Like, I mean, obviously he's afraid of losing Padme, but those are also a reminder that he couldn't save his mom, right? As a Jedi, as someone who was trying to do things the right way. Like, he wasn't strong enough, didn't get there in time, all those things.
Yeah.
And then there's Palpatine just dangling that carrot, right? Like, well, maybe I might know, right? Like, maybe I can tell you how to save her. And so, I mean, at the end, you ask yourself the question, like, what reason does he really have to stay with the Jedi? Other than a personal moral code, which he genuinely tries to stick to. What reason does he have to follow them, right? They don't like him. They're jerks. They're hypocrites. I mean, Mace Windu flat out tells him, hey, if you're right about this, you'll have earned my trust, right? I don't trust you, right? You don't have my trust right now.
Yeah.
And so what reason does he really even have to continue following them with what he's seen and how he's been treated, And so at that point, Palpatine's played it so well, and he's gotten so much of Anakin's interest and knows what he wants, and he's just dangled it in front of him. I mean, it's inevitable at that point because Padme's, that's what's important, right? That's at the apex of his priorities.
Yeah. I like to say that Mace Windu is single-handedly the cause of Anakin's fall to the dark side. I do not like Mace Windu at all because he's just a jerk. Nope, I mean, I get it that people love him, but he is the absolute worst. He gets on the council instead of Qui-Gon, which is just a sham because Mace is just, he's to the book and everything, and Qui-Gon's too much of a free thinker. And I get that's how they wrote him to be, but I do not like Mace Windu.
As a character, he's terrible, right? Like,
he's meant to be terrible.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. Is he is meant to be that foil for what kind of drives Anakin to Palpatine. Yeah. So
he's better in the Clone Wars. They do give him some development there.
But, he is a little better there. No, here in this movie, he's just a jerk.
Yeah, well, in episode 1 all the way through, that's a lot of Anakin's fall to the dark side. It's built up over the 3 movies. They don't want him in episode 1, but they take him. Episode 2, it doesn't focus quite as much on just how bad they are, but again, we have to develop Anakin's personal issues in episode 2, and then episode 3, you get the hypocrisy, everything else that we love to hate about the Jedi, and it's the perfect storm. They lose their chosen one right from under their noses to the Emperor, who is also right under their nose, and they had no clue. So when he's and to wrap up Anakin's fall to the dark side, you see Palpatine moving to end the war altogether. He sends Anakin to Mustafar to finish off the Separatists, but Obi-Wan and Yoda are right behind. Obi-Wan knows how to get there. He sneaks on Padme's ship. And that's where it's probably the most emotional part, is with Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar. They have a lot of dialogue that shows Anakin truly is gone at this point. I mean, he's willing to harm Padme because she brought Obi-Wan. He sees Obi-Wan as just one of the other people who are trying to hold him back. And so they have the duel. Doesn't go well for Anakin because Anakin is Anakin, and he's brash, and he's not very forward thinking with things. And so it's how he ultimately loses. He trusts too much in his power and not in conventional wisdom or the high ground, and turns out to not go well for him.
No, and at the end, he really is just, I mean, he's a shell of the Jedi he was, right? One of the things Like even Padme doesn't have his ear at the end, right? Like he can't even hear what she's saying. I mean, the things he's done, like you can't go back and reconcile that stuff, right? Like after
Yeah.
you've literally murdered people at the temple, done
Kids.
some pretty horrible, atrocious
Yeah.
things, you can't just be like, you're right. This was probably not a good idea. Let's go back. Let's
Yeah.
try to. I mean, there's no way. I mean, because you've seen his conscience throughout try to do the right thing. There's no way his conscience can now coexist with who Vader is, right? Like
No.
they can't be in the same place anymore, and so he can't
Yeah.
hear it. He can't process it. And you're right. At the end, he thinks he's greater, the best. He doesn't think there's any way that Obi-Wan could possibly defeat him, and so that's where he's left, right? Like defeated, destroyed, alone, like literally lost everything. And so, I mean, man, the way this arc ends for him is just incredibly heartbreaking because it's all the
Yeah.
things he was afraid of
They all
culminate
happen.
right there for him,
Yeah.
right? Being left behind, being inferior, being alone. It's like all of it. So
Yeah.
it's a rough ending for Anakin.
Yeah. And he gets sold a false bill of goods, like we've
Yeah.
said. And so once he's more machine than man, and he's standing there, and the first thing he wants to ask is, "Where's Padme?" And
Yeah.
so you see that yes, he is gone, but he hasn't forgot why he's gone. You know, he's done all of this for her, essentially. Now he takes a very misguided approach to doing it for her, but he's done it for her, and the Emperor, knowing exactly what's happened, just says,
Yeah.
"Well, seems like you killed her." So it's just even more fueling his torment. He's been manipulated, and now he's stuck in this suit. He's not even himself anymore. Yep. Padme's gone. He assumes his child is gone as well because he knows she's pregnant. It really is sad, and you see how he turns into this cold, dark symbol of evil for the Empire.
Yeah, and I like that back and forth between her scene and his scene where he's being put in the suit, because it's really like the death of both of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of watching Padme's and Anakin's death happen, really at the same time, and he kind of becomes this completely new entity. So yeah, I like how that kind of wraps up.
And that leaves us to a perfect segue into our final topic, which is A New Hope. So we see that
familiar.
Does sound familiar. It's almost like it will be next week's episode, but we see that before Padme dies, she has twins, and very similar to how Empire Strikes Back. In Empire Strikes Back, the bad guys win every major conflict. They win on Hoth, they get Han Solo, they defeat Luke Skywalker. In Revenge of the Sith, the bad guys win every step of the way, even when it appears that the good guys are winning. So there's really nothing to be happy about at the end of this if you look at it objectively. But George paints a beautiful picture at the end because we know what's coming in episode 4. So we see Leia goes with Bail Organa, who has been wanting children. We see Luke going to his family on Tatooine. Obi-Wan's going to stay there and watch over Luke. And then we also learn that Qui-Gon's a Force ghost and he's going to train Obi-Wan. So we get a lot of hope at the end of this movie. Yeah. So we see that there is hope for Obi-Wan. He's not done training. There's hope for the galaxy and Luke and Leia. Yoda is really the only one who kind of relegates himself to failure at the end of this movie. Yeah. He has to go to Dagobah because he's failed. And everybody else still has a fighting chance. I like how they ended the movie where, man, this is really dark, but there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah, I'd be really curious. I'd like to talk to someone who had not seen the original trilogy and then saw these movies and what the perception of the ending was. Because for me, it's like, well, I know where this goes. I know that there's redemption in the story. I know what becomes of Luke and Leia Skywalker, right? But I'd be curious for people who haven't seen the original trilogy, the way this leaves off, because it does leave off very hopeless in some ways, right? The hope is very small. Yeah. Like it's a very, if you don't know the rest of the story, it seems pretty insignificant. Right. The fact that there's these two babies, right? Like they're there.
Strange.
And so
yeah.
I mean, I'd be curious to hear someone's perspective who did not see the original trilogy and just saw the way that these prequel movies came to a close. I think I'd be interested to hear that.
So how many I'm assuming your youngest children, your two youngest, have not seen the original trilogy yet. So we
Not yet.
have
No.
a
So I
perfect
could do
opportunity. Yeah.
that.
Science.
So we'll check back in
A
how
few
many
years.
years?
Yeah. Well, you want them to be at an age they can truly appreciate it, you know. So you're going to have to starve them from
Yeah.
Star Wars for a while.
Yeah, no, one of my brain just went blank. My nieces,
Yeah.
my nieces and my nephew, for my sister's kids, they've really gotten into Star Wars lately. I mean, they are obsessed
Yeah.
with it, and I think they were not happy to learn that Anakin becomes Darth Vader. So,
Yeah.
not a fun time for a child.
Right.
But
So
yeah,
that's our segue to next week's episode. So we're gonna pick up where this story leaves off on Tatooine and from a distance Alderaan. We won't get too far into that
yeah.
quite yet, but
Oh,
that's
won't
where
last
we're
too
going.
long.
We're gonna skip over Rogue One and Kenobi and Rebels and Andor, I suppose, but we're gonna probably draw a little bit from Rogue One and from Kenobi,
Yeah,
building into episode 4, because they both really enrich your A New Hope viewing experience. They add a lot to it. But
yeah.
before we go, we do have one final bonus segment, which is the What Did Our Wives Think? Now, my wife was very opinionated. Ashley apparently hates this movie, which I was
That's
pretty
hilarious.
disappointed to learn. She did not
Yeah.
agree to come on and rant about it, but I think I can get her to be on my episode 3 great debate whenever I get to there, because I was hard pressed to find someone who did not like episode 3. Turns out I live with that person. Yeah, it's
you found her a while ago.
kind of afraid to go to sleep at night now.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so what did Brittany think first of all, and then I'll be the downer for what Ashley thought.
So overall, she thought Anakin is too angsty. She has issues with with just some of the things he says and does, which I get. One of the things that she said annoyed her was sometimes they talk about things for exposition purposes, and that's really the only purpose. Like, she still doesn't understand why they talked about midichlorians in episode 1. She's like, what was the point of that? Like, why did they?
We
even
had
say
to know
that?
how strong he was.
Right. They couldn't just say it. I kind of get
Yeah.
that one. But no, she liked the story. She thinks it's a good story. She really liked the Order 66 part. She said it was really interesting to watch. So
Yeah.
I think she liked it okay. I'm reminded pretty regularly that she, as much as I'm trying to get her into it, she still doesn't pay attention, because at the very beginning when they're flying in those starships,
Uh-huh.
and it showed one of the clones, she's like, hey, he looks like Boba Fett. I was like, oh my gosh.
So Ashley brought
like,
that
yeah,
up
well, there's
too.
a reason. So she's like, no, Jango Fett. I was like, both.
Both. Same. One and the same.
So I don't know how much she actually pays attention, but she did like the overall story, right? Despite her complaints with some of the dialogue and stuff, she liked it. So
Ashley likes episode 1. Episode 2 she didn't watch, which I'm sure she would have thought not highly of that one. And then episode 3, I mean, we get past the corny scenes with Anakin and Padme, and she didn't say too much because she doesn't like Natalie Portman. I think we've established that. She doesn't like Natalie Portman as Padme. But man, she was really hot about this movie. So I had to go back through my chats on Instagram just to read through exactly what she said. Nice. So the first thing was, it was when Anakin was starting to fall to the dark side, was this movie is stupid. So Palpatine is like lying to him, and she's like, well, how does all this work? So I'm going through all those things. And then we get to the point to where, like, okay, he's, Palpatine's bad, so I'm just gonna join him. I'm like, well, no, he's trying to save Padme, and she's like, by what? Killing everyone? So she's running through all this, and it is logical. So she has about a 10-minute rant about, hey, let's kill the bad guy. He's clearly lying. You've been looking for a Sith Lord. That's him. I'm like, no, Anakin's looking through, the tunnel of saving his wife. It's a noble thing in his side. She's like, well, noble, he kills kids over. She goes through the whole thing in the Jedi Temple. I'm like, yeah, it's not good, but
that's why they call it the dark side.
Yeah, I mean, he was, as Yoda says, because Yoda says it, he was deceived by a lie, like all of us were. We all fell to it in our different ways. Anakin just kind of fell the hardest. So she's really mad about it, and she closes her argument with, this movie is stupid. Rogue One is a lot better. So now Rogue One is a great movie. I
It
don't,
is.
as far as the Star Wars story goes, it's not a lot better. As far as a movie goes as a whole, probably is a lot better.
Yeah.
George didn't take the path of least resistance in making these prequels. He set them up to get complaints in a lot of ways, but the
Sure.
story had to be told. Rogue One was there to make money. The prequels were there to tell the story George wanted. George didn't need money. So she was mad about that. Then we get to a question that she poses, because I say, well, she asked, do all your Star Wars friends like Revenge of the Sith? And I say, yeah, it's all one of our top 3 favorite Star Wars movies.
Yeah, kind of.
So she says, what's your favorite part? Anakin killing the young ones, Anakin letting Palpatine live, the part where every Jedi dies, the part where he chokes his wife, or the part where he says screw you to Obi-Wan, which I had to correct her by saying, he says I hate you, and she says same thing. So,
man, she yeah, okay. Well, I hope she has a better time with the original trilogy. Goodness.
She did say the originals are better.
Okay. Well, I'm glad.
I think she might like the sequels better too.
That's rough. That is a rough review. She's a tough critic.
I just didn't know. She's kind of on edge about it. So the weird, what did our wives think? Just in the same way Revenge of the Sith takes a dark turn, this took a dark turn that I was not expecting. I'm sympathetic to Anakin, and man, she is not. She does not like the prequels. So
fair enough.
That's where we end there.
No wrong opinion, right?
It's opinionated for sure. If you're still with us, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Again, it blows my mind every week that I see that people actually watch or listen to this on Spotify or YouTube. So you can catch this on both Spotify and YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This gets our voice out to more people for whatever reason want to hear it. So we greatly appreciate that. We will see you next week as we get into the original trilogy, breaking down A New Hope. So thank you, and may the Force be with you.